How's that? Testing. 1, 2, 3. 2, 2, 2. Much better. Thanks, team. Beautiful. All right. There you go. Let's start at the beginning a little bit there. At Monday, 23rd of March, 2026. And here we are. Dr. Zoo on the show. Put a little bit of music on there before. Great song that, actually. Tub thumping. Never get, if I get knocked down, we get up again. That's what we do. Zucoiners. That's what we do. Now, question. We had a question there which said on the list here, which is fantastic. Good to see everybody coming on board. Hi, Alan. Keep up the tremendous work you and the team are doing. Thank you very much for that. You can assure you the team is working overtime. Years ago, you mentioned that you had to register as a hunter to capture the discounts. Will apply to Zoo Hunt as well next month. Firstly, make it clear we're not jumping into Zoo Hunt next month. We're building that up as well on the sidelines, but it is looking magnificent. I did some hunts on the weekend and super impressed with the hunt. I can assure you, it's Zoocaz on steroids. Same old Zoocaz, but on steroids, everybody. And I think you'll be absolutely delighted the way it operates and converts the fraction immediately when you collect and hunt. And in fact, the other little tweaks, things which I'm really pumped about, is it allows the merchant, subject to the person that is doing the hunt, to click them as a favourite. So if you collect a particular merchant as your favourite, you are giving them approval to send to you at any time their vouchers directly with the notifications, of which you can collect, put them in your loot bucket. We're calling it a loot bucket. And then you can go off and use those. Now, now someone wants the microphone turned up. I'll turn it up a bit just to see how we go. Hopefully that makes a bit better. So we're not going to do Zoo Hunt next month, but we will be certainly looking to explode that when we are ready. The focus next month, just for those new to the show, is all about Zootopia and letting Zootopia unleashed for the trading and for those that have been, angst about wanting to get out or buy more coins. That's what we're focused on. Now, that sort of leads into a question from another guest. I would say the guest numbers, but they're so long it's not funny, like 148755514. So I'm not even going to try and repeat that again, but let's just see where that one sits. What I'm going to do, I'm going to move this channel over here so I can read it better. There we go. How's that with the sound, everybody? It's all a bit new here. Now that question is, Dear Dr. Zoo, you mentioned in the last broadcast that the Zutopia relaunch scheduled for April will not incorporate an international mass marketing campaign. How then can we expect any real upward movement in the price with only a small number of wallet holders? Why more delays? Thank you. Well, we're not expecting any real upward movement. As I said in other Dr. Zoos, you'll find that you'll be at the mercy of your fellow Zucoin holders who want to sell. Now, we call them silly sellers, but they have every right to do what they like for whatever reasons, whatever price they had an entry price and what price they want to get out. That will be the price, because that's what's called a laissez-faire free market. You do what you like. We're not in control of anything. Happy to do the follow-ups on our marketing campaign, which is on the website, and we'll be rolling those through. I'm very, very happy with the success of the wallets and the uptake of that, and that'll be expanded. But in the meantime, you can either turn the Zutopia off, let the sellers do their job, because the other side, of course, and this is the big flip side, is that it's an extraordinary, wonderful opportunity if you're a buyer. So whilst you shouldn't be expecting anything in terms of upward movements, what you could be expecting is the opportunity of those that come in and buy and get cheap prices and suck the sellers in, basically, which is fantastic for the buyers. So good on the buyers in taking those coins out when that happens. Otherwise, you just got to wait. Patience is a virtue. Of course, we're doing this now, which has been some preparation, because I have been talking my head off about black swans and black swanettes. I know that's not the right term, but that's what I use, of what's happening around the world, and it's only getting more and more dangerous as each hour goes by, and I'm referring to Iran and the situation with Trumpy. So there's some really big things swimming out there in terms of corrections that are going to be big. I've read some reports that they're suggesting the share markets could drop 25%, which is repeating itself, history repeating itself from 1987 and 1929. So nothing surprises me. And you might find there is a major crisis coming, because we don't have a stable Australian economy, which has all come about because of those people that, a bit like silly sellers, that vote Labor. You vote Labor, you get what you want, kick in the butt. Nothing much more we can do about that, but that's the way in which that generation, and I'm referring to the generation of politicians, that play the game and play with your money and throw it all over the place and have massive debts, which have been warned about, and that has a major detrimental impact. The great news for Zucoin, the exceptional news really, is that because we're in a strong position to actually market the product globally and to the masses and to get user-friendly scenarios, the great news is we're in box seat to do that, whereas others are struggling because they've got the way in which their markets operate and the problems that occur as a consequence. So it is a big problem. Let's just see how it all pans out, everybody. So that relates to that question. Hope that makes sense. I wouldn't be expecting much at all. If you expect less on it, then things will take care of itself and away we go. Now, that doesn't stop everybody from having a crack either in supporting Zucoins through your own networks and contacts. Make it perfectly clear. The core engine of Zucoin SplitChain has been up and about for over 4 years. Transactions continue to happen peer-to-peer directly. Zutopia is one alternative market, and I hate to say it, but Dr. Zu was proven right with the dramas that have been happening with centralised crypto exchanges. More and more losses continue to get racked up every day. There's been a graveyard of losses and things that have occurred because of the way the coins operate and the structures. We've talked about some of those. $50 million lost last week. The list goes on and on and on. So we're not in that. Look, we're in a very strong position, and the ability for all those boxes to be ticked off is exceptional. Our CTO Robert just keeps forging ahead with things that keep coming behind the scenes that you don't even realise, and that just strengthens the overall connectivity that allows us to get utility. Bitcoin cannot compete with what's on the table with Zucoin's SplitChain, Zutopia and Zucaz combo. So, that's the most amazing. We've had the wait and at the moment, which is looking pretty exciting on that front. Now, we've got a person hoping for the price of over $2 per coin. It depends what timelines you're talking, but certainly I'd be hoping for far greater than that. I've always and haven't shied away from my personal long-term view with all the things coming together, and that is well and truly around, for me anyway, whether you could blow it up your ass. There could be zero, but for me, the monies that we've put in, the structures, the strategies, the long-term, the concepts in terms of beating the problems that Satoshi didn't address in Bitcoin and the problems that Vitalik's now having in Ethereum, it's quite extraordinary that those boxes have been ticked. The blockchain trilemma has been solved by what we've built, what you have locked yourselves into for that long-term view, and $1,000 a coin should be nothing out of the norm. As I've said on one earlier, Dr. Zoo, we have an opportunity for people that with less than $500 you could become a millionaire because of the nature of the beast. Now, you mightn't become a millionaire, but you're giving it the best shot and the best opportunity because of the way in which these things have come together. Now, the question is, how can you say it's been solved when you have not scaled? Well, there's a difference between creating the product that is ready to scale and do 100,000 transactions plus per second and then bringing people on in a marketing sense. They're two different concepts. The technology has been developed and released that it can scale. That is no question. So that's been solved. What you're talking about is actual adoption, and even that has been solved because you can now get downloads of whatever number of wallets you want and trade that you want to happen. So the question really is, have you solved the marketing scalability, if that's what you're talking about? Because we are just one cog in the wheel. We are putting in train how we see adoption can happen, and you are in just as strong a position to now have a marketing scalability, no problems at all, if and at any time of your choosing you wish to start the network going. So these things take time. Bitcoin has taken 17 years to scale, and here we are, yes, in year 7. Here we are with the firepower of the technology, which is indisputable. There is not I'd invite you again, go out there, find an Ethereum or Bitcoin or Solana or one of those wallets and move value around freely to the fractionalization that we have 24/7 anywhere in the world. It's just not going to happen. So getting a bit antsy and worrying about the price relating to the marketability, that's quite rightly where we're at now to build that up. Now that then correlates to the formula that I've talked about, Q, the quantity theory of money, and it's simply about demand. But there's nothing stopping you getting out there marketing. If you get the urge and want to do it and follow through with your $50 million, well, by all means, knock yourself out and do it. It's a process that we have put in train to maximise how we see now that we have the complete package on the table, has been successfully doing the right thing for over 4 years. I mean, you've got to understand, everybody, it's a bit like, thinking about, we see, an 8-lane highway that's being built and, it doesn't cost generally, it's cost the government and in the end of the day taxpayers some money. In this instance, it's cost Dr. Zoo to build that 8 or 10-lane highway. And as a result, others can come on and enjoy the fruits of that development. And that development would be putting your cars on the highway, whether you've got a Lamborghini or whether you've got a Volvo or a Mini, but it's available to be used. In this instance, there's no tollway. We haven't built a 10-lane highway that requires any monies to be paid and allows developers to now start to wander in and build products and create utility, and that takes time. Nobody works to a program to make others instant millionaires who do nothing. It's exactly the same scenario that I've talked about. If you buy a bottle of 1977 Grange, you haven't had any contribution to the winery, to the way in which the maturity of that has happened in the casks over years, the bottling, and all those things that that occur with creating that bottle of Grange. What you've done is bought the product. Now, the market forces over time reflect what that value is. Either you drink it, use it, which is what you can do with the digital asset, and bear in mind that Zucoin has to have spent a lot of money over the journey on legals alone, I mentioned the other day, to make sure we can scale in countries. That doesn't mean to say it gets knocked out because of regulatory issues. We are fully compliant. We've been through an extraordinary exercise in many jurisdictions. Now, you think about the scalability of, say, a transfer of value competing with someone like Elon Musk. He already has a massive database. And when you look at that database, that doesn't stop him because of the nature of the payment system he's trying to put in place. He needs to have licensing in 50-odd states in America. Now, that's before he can tap into even start to use it. Now, they're bringing that forward, but there's no change out of $5 million a pop per state in bonds and things that are required. The Zucoins, being true peer-to-peer, falls outside of that, and away it goes. So, you've got to weigh those sort of things up when you're looking at the true global picture of how you want to see this roll out as a peer-to-peer scenario. And that's what it means. It means that everybody's involved, not just what we're doing, as in the HQ. It's what everybody contributes to make these things successful, and, away you go. So we've got another couple of questions coming through, which are fantastic, people. How is it going to scale without a massive increase in wallets? Well, when Google started, that many years ago, if you read the book on Google, that started with one viral link and away it went. Yes, it took time, but that viral effect created the interest in Google and it took off. So, there's a number of ways to skin the cat. And in that instance, that's how they decided to get the product out and about. And it takes a bit of time, but that has a massive impact. That viral impact is far more loyal, particularly at the time Google launched, than any other method you can probably look at. I mean, the trouble today is that no one knows what is a real ad or not. With AI on the surge, I've been playing around with a video the other day. It was unbelievable. We used a virtual assistant AI person to be part of the ad, and you couldn't tell the difference in any great shape or form. So we have a strategy. It's available on the website to see. It's been there for a while. We call it blitz marketing. That's what we're going to stick with. It may be successful and it may not. There may be the approach that we've got is completely wrong. So, time will tell. But at this stage, we're very happy with overcoming the barriers and the hurdles to allow people to do mass adoption. And the same with the Zoo Hunt. Within one click of a button, you get an instant Zucoin wallet built in to the Zoo Hunt wallet. You get instant gratification on collection of the fractions of the coins with the AR, and you'll get the same outcome in that wallet with Zoo tokens in relation to product launches by the merchants. But it takes time. I've never come across instant millionaires. It's always a great story, but overnight success takes time, and you just got to wait. Simple as that. So all that rollout is evident and transparent on the website, the way in which we increase those numbers. But again, it doesn't stop anybody else from doing the same. So, if 10,000 people have 10 contacts, if you do the quick maths of that, you'll see that turns into 100,000 people and it multiplies itself out. And that's because you're giving a very nice user face or interface of the wallet, the security that comes with that, the problems that you have by the simplicity of the backups. People don't, lose coins. I saw an article where, just under $800,000 was stolen from a particular wallet because someone got access to video coverage in someone's house, and all they simply did was watch the person on a computer, who then eventually wanted to access their crypto wallet and happened to see on the screen and take a complete shot of the entire seed phrase, which is the private key access, and stole everything out of those wallets. Now, the question begs as to how they got video coverage within the house, but nothing's improbable when you think about the technology today that's out there. So that's an example of, not thinking through too carefully what it means to have those sort of seed phrases to try and protect wallets, when in fact it turned out that was a disaster. So we don't want to go down that road, people. We tick the boxes, we've taken our time. I can recall, which everybody seems to forget about, we had instant transfers at one stage between wallets directly to someone's phone, and we've solved that now with this push notification. But certainly in that day and age of the upgrades of the Zucoin wallet, there was one way you could send it anytime 24/7 to a public wallet address of a Zucoin, similar to how the rest of crypto operates today. And we had a 30% failure rate, which has been recorded on information that we've provided on the website. And the failure rate was because users, not because of the platform, but because users sent crypto, Zucoins, to the wrong phone numbers, which means it ends up in the ether. They couldn't get the country codes right. There was spamming issues with the telcos, and it was a disaster. And the first thing that happens, the good news is for listeners, people never blame themselves when it comes to losing money. I've lost money and I blame myself. I've had to over the years. But when it comes to crypto, the very first thought bubble is Zucoin's HQ or Endres and Dr. Zoo are scam artists because people lose their coins. Now, we've had very, very few, but that's the normal reaction. Now, those protection mechanisms, which leads to mass adoption, are there for a reason, because we don't want to hear from anybody, because it's your sovereign wealth that you are protecting. If you've got $100 or $100 note in your wallet, in your back pocket, that, ladies and gentlemen, is your responsibility. You look after it. You move that $100 to whoever you wish, whatever merchant you want, or you look after it in your wallet so you don't lose it. So that was the similar issue we had with Zutopia. The people were being naughty. We had lots of naughty people. They wanted to do the transaction. They conducted the two-factor authentication, and then they waffle off to their bank and say they didn't do the transaction, which is naughty. But you've got to stop the naughties, because Dr. Zoo has to wear the cost of the naughty people. In that case, we only lost 80,000, which is fantastic. You guys don't have to worry about that. You just got to worry about what the price is. But Dr. Zoo has to worry about the overall infrastructure to make sure that doesn't turn into 800,000 or 8 million on the platform. And that's why we did the soft launch. We took a bit of time. We solved the 3DS. We solved the solutions on VPNs and all the rest of it that comes with partnership with Stripe. And they're delighted. And there's a lot more finer tweaks that you'll see when Zutopia switches back on, because it's even stronger again with what the team have built to make sure that as close to 100% there can be no dispute on any transaction. And we're not worried about small sums. We're expecting that in time Zutopia could be turning over 100, 200 or 400 million a day. And Dr. Zoo doesn't want to be a little wood duck, that if there's a small percentage, which is an industry standard, of anything from 0.5 to 2.5% of expected losses, that the little wood duck wears it. It's not going to happen, simply for the glory of people using a marketplace to make their own personal fortunes with no risk. Now, the intention is we want good people, good money, regulated, that come in. If you're going to take the risk and buy Zoo coins, by all means do that, trade them, use them, connect it to what can happen with merchants online, bricks and mortar, and away you go. That is the ingenious part of the scalability we talk about. It will not happen with Bitcoin or certainly Ethereum in that process of that connectivity between consumers and merchants. So I hope that makes that clearer. Now, moving through some of these, this is very good actually, everybody. It's fantastic to dust ourselves off and have a bit of a reflect. Zootopia or some other global trading platform is the only way to real success. This peer-to-peer on Facebook is like, into the wind and thinking it's not going to blow back on you. It's like selling ice blocks on the corner and thinking you're going to make $1 million. Not sure who guessed that was, but that is an extremely apt analogy, and we may need to pay you some money to use the analogy, because you've created a little copyright there, and I like it very much. Now, next, I'll keep working through some of these, everybody. Hope that's all right. I haven't touched on the subject today yet. But the next guest is, I have been asked how can they buy some Zucoins from Zucoins that they are holding. They were available prior to the soft launch at 100 times 10. That's correct. If Zucoins are going to sit on the ones that are left and not sell them, would be strange. Well, Zucoins has always stated it has a marketing and treasuring pool. Those prices, if we go back in time, nobody would be concerned about paying $100 for Bitcoin. It's just a patience game. So on that front, that the opportunity would be to average down if that's the case, if the sellers are there. But Zucoins, there are only so many coins available, and it's a very, very tight budget in terms of the liquidity that can be provided by HQ at Zucoins. And like the rest of all Zucoin early adopters that have taken great risks, we're seeking to get the maximised return as possible on all of the deliveries we've talked about. So we do have a budget for the AR in order to get global AR fractions dropped around the world. This is not just about sitting on our hands in different sectors like Australia and New Zealand. This is about tackling the big markets where there is actual crypto action, particularly now, as I mentioned in Dr. Zoo the other day, with the SEC and the commodities trading, which means that there's going to be more opportunity in bigger markets, and hopefully people will sell lesser numbers of coins at higher prices. And but again, look, you haven't walked into the crypto space on the basis that there's any guarantees whatsoever. I've covered off on that this space is inherently dangerous. We're doing everything we can to deliver the best possible outcome. There's no guarantees. In fact, there's no guarantees with anything in the current world, particularly in the next 24 hours. It could get absolutely even far worse than what it is. But I mentioned to you that one of the things, if you were sitting in Iran, would be to blow up the desalination plants in those other countries, particularly Dubai. And instead of worrying about what the price of a crypto is and how wonderful the tax benefits are in Dubai, I'd be more worried about one, obviously from a personal perspective from Dr. Zoo is the safety of the horses and, of course, the safety of the population. But what does it mean if there's no water? 90% of that source of fresh water comes from those desalination plants. Now, Iran's already talking about having a crack at it. But you start playing with infrastructure, what Trump's talking about, electricity, power plants, next thing it's the oil leases, and then it explodes in a crossfire. And, you know, we'll be lucky if we're all not drafted in the new armies heading off to the Middle East for some holidays around the pyramids. So let's just take a reality check and continue in the world that we have, because of the how gracious we should be with our current lives and the way in which we sit in the world. But you know, it's an interesting time actually, and you know, but we are poised to maximise accessibility is crucial. And that's what took a long time, was to make sure that on all fronts the product can be easily used, easily understood, and easily and virally distributed. That's the key. So let's sit tight on that. Yes. Now the next guest says yes, yeah, but you have not scaled successfully yet. When do you then, you can say you have solved, why do you then say, well, I say we've solved it because we have. I mean, you haven't been listening. There's a difference between the technology that can be mapped out to show how it can be scalable if the technology is there to be used, versus not being in a position that you know from the outside. If the technology can't be scaled, then you wouldn't be sending out 1 million potential wallets, because you wouldn't cope. Everything about the back end is being designed for that scalability. Let me give you a little example. Look, let's just touch on a couple of things. Now, let's talk about the structure, because I mean, this is a technology proposition for another day, really. When you talk to the likes of Robert and the team about the scalability capabilities compared to even, say, Bitcoin. Now, you understand clearly that the heavy lifting of the validation, now, in order to confirm a transaction, generally you need 3 parties. So, by way of example, if I, as in Dr. Zoo, sends $10 to somebody I know with a bank account, the arbiter of that is the bank. The bank sits in the middle. It says, yes, it has moved from A to B, and there is either a clearing house if it's a third-party bank, or OSCO, for example. It's a bit of an honorary system. It's one bank says, yes, I'm going to process this, and you're going to acknowledge that that's correct, and therefore we change the balances in a ledger. Now, in that instance, for example, the Commonwealth Bank might have 4 million odd people, and their scalability is governed by the centralisation of that data. So they increase their capacity of data storage in order to allow for that so-called change of ownership in the ledger of the account. They don't physically move your money around. If Dr. Zoo moves that $10 to someone else in CommBank, there's just a change in the ledger. One goes up, one goes down, but there is data. And that is the way in which the great companies and banks of the world have operated consistently in relation to all data. I mean, every time you upload a video onto YouTube, somebody has to store the data. That's a centralised database, which means they have to show the technology can be scaled up to handle that massive increase in data or bandwidth. You know, there's somebody's got to pay for that. Now, in a decentralised world, along comes Bitcoin, and all of a sudden, Bitcoin says, look, or Satoshi, we think we can distribute the weight of that data across many different computers or nodes. Someone comes up with a word called node, and we'll call them a miner. Could have been called bananas. And as a result of that, that tries to distribute the weight of that data, which comes back to scalability. Now, the problem is, including the way in which Ethereum operates. So it operates on a staking basis, proof of stake. That is, there's rewards for people spending their hard-earned dollars to maintain servers so that two people can transfer a value knowing that the values are correct or there's no double spend or rip-offs. In Bitcoin's case, it's proof of work. What happens is someone spends the big bucks, keeps a big computer running, and it does all the heavy lifting in terms of taking the data in, storing that data, and it gets bigger and bigger and longer, the Great Wall of Bitcoin. The algorithms get harder and harder to prove. But at the end of the day, all that does is create an enormous cost exercise across the board where someone's paying for that process in order to simply prove a transaction. Now, along comes SplitChain, which is why we're comfortable with the scalability that we talk about, and it says we worked a way out that only needs the last transaction and balance to be cached, that is, stored. It doesn't do anything. It stores the truth of that last transaction. And the node doesn't need any massive computing power. It just says, okay, over here is this last transaction from Dr. Zoo and whoever. That is the balance and the last transaction. The heavy lifting is done in reverse. It's done by the peers. The peers have all the transaction history on your phone because you can cope with that individually. Collectively, we don't want that. We don't want the big wall of Bitcoin. We want millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people to manage their own data. Now, if Dr. Zoo does 10 million transactions with one of you out there in Zucoin world, each one-on-one, there would be 20 million transactions stored in Bitcoin. Again, in the SplitChain, there's only 2. That's proof of scalability. What you're talking about is adoption. That's a different kettle of fish. You don't get to crow about bringing on lots of wallets and bringing on millions of people if you can't solve the first problem. The trilemma has been solved. security, scalability, and decentralisation. Now, don't get too hamstrung on the word trilemma either, because that's another made-up concoction by Vitalik. He came up with that because he couldn't solve the problems, and he still hasn't. He cannot continue to have his people validating transactions, trying to earn money from the network through gas fees, because remember, we've got the firepower of scalability because there's not a single dime paid to anybody. It's free. That's why you can do the fractions. That's why you can build utility. That's why we could have 30 million merchants pumping out every minute, every hour, vouchers, Zoo tokens. Bring that on play with other consumers directly. That's not going to happen, people, with Bitcoin or Ethereum. You are never going to have a free cup of coffee on the back of a Bitcoin. It can't happen. Now, let's just think about for a minute. All of a sudden, you've got the humble little Zucoin scalable node or SplitChain, and literally based on the cost of running a little computer with a plug-in, you could do this from your home, and you could have a direct link to Starlink and keep it going. You don't need massive computing power for the SplitChain, and you could become a node that caches this information. Now, what's the cost going to be? Well, let's just look at on current numbers. We can talk about some of the electricity in terms of running that server, and 100 million people or 100 million wallets, based on all of the testing and stuff we've done, should cost no more than $105 a month. Now think about it. 100 million wallets transacting means that there would be a maximum of, at any point in time, assuming one transaction per wallet, of 100 million transactions stored on a very minimal, cost-effective node that everybody can run. Now, we have a nice concept, which we won't talk about today, but of how those particular people can make money as a node in a decentralised environment. It's quite ingenious. But let's compare that to Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin basically survives on two types of nodes. One is a full node that has to manage every single transactional history stored since 2009 and continuing to grow. And then you have what they call the pruned nodes. That's those that sort of forget about too much of the past, that they can revert back to the full nodes and run a very tight little prune node system that tries to minimise the costs and and then it falls into energy consumption and the way in which for those out there that are worried about CO2, or you should be worried about how in the hell both these systems of Bitcoin and Ethereum energy guzzles, particularly now with AI data centers. But nevertheless, those particular nodes are running at exceptionally high prices that at any point, if they stop, you can have $20 million or $20 billion, people, of value in Bitcoin, and you can piss it up against the wall because there won't be a node that can process the transaction. Now think about that. If it was a day of reckoning that said there's only 1 million Bitcoin left to mine, what is the incentive to maintain those nodes for your benefit? Because you don't care. All you worry about is if you own one Bitcoin worth 68,000, it's gone down by the way, that you think somebody out there in Bitcoin world will forever and a day process your transactions if you want to move it around. And that might be as simple as moving it to an exchange to sell it, let alone trying to work out how to send it to a third party. Now, Zucoin's scalability, SplitChain scalability is there today. It doesn't need to worry about that. If you have an interest in Zucoins that is valuable, it'll be in your interest to run a SplitChain node for $105 a month because you contribute to the network to keep it going for that cheap, measly amount of money because it doesn't need the power. Now, as of late March 2026, we now are seeing an acute profitability pressure on those very Bitcoin nodes I just talked about. Now, the industry average of an all-in-production cost to a Bitcoin full node, and even to more an extent of the prune nodes, it costs $88,000 US per Bitcoin in costs. That's just to keep Bitcoin people happy that the coins can move around and be validated. I mean, there's no magic to that. So it becomes a nonsense. Satoshi was fatally flawed in the way in which he tried to create decentralization so that someone can get the glory of moving a digital asset of value between A and B. And by using a node or miner, C, in this instance, that person or business or whatever, and Trump's are a huge organisation of just, as I said in a recent broadcast, it's spent about another $30 million, trying to buy more Acer-type computers that can handle the algorithms with a 19-month payback period, assuming the price was above 100,000. Now, you don't have to be Einstein to work out that all of these nodes as of today are underwater because the current Bitcoin price is 69,200 US. Now, that means there's a 21% break-even differential. They're losing money. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're running those machines at a 21% loss to the current price of what you're trying to earn in mining fees, why would you not just turn it off? And if it gets turned off, you can forget about whatever price Bitcoin's at because it's dead in the water. You need certainty of transaction completion. And the ingenious part of the SplitChain concept was to look back, review what was the current thinking between Satoshi and Vitalik and Ethereum and Solana and all these things, and say that's wrong. It was designed wrong and doesn't have that long-term capability. Now, that long-term capability is crucial if you want to get and maximise the price in its own right. And that's why we have seen 13.4 million tokens or meme coins or altcoins or NFTs vaporised. They don't exist. They're gone. We've seen trillions of dollars lost in the crypto space for a whole raft of reasons, which are some of that is detailed on the website. So the long-term solution, unequivocally, clearly, is that you get it right in the first place and you've got a massive capability to take them on. Now, I say it again, the second mouse gets the cheese. Every concept that's come about in mankind's history, the poor buggers that come out of the blocks first generally don't make it. I mean, nobody would be young enough to know about, or old enough rather, to know about MySpace. MySpace, Murdoch lost $300 million, but it was almost exactly the same as Facebook. Now, poor old Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, he has got billions of users desperately trying to feed that through AI now on advertising revenues. We are trying to take that away through the capacity of Zucoins and SplitChain, because we see through the model of Zucas and AR that if you've got that ready-made market, you've got that connectivity, there's no charges between transfers, you've got fractions, and you tokenise it, then there's no reason that merchants can't directly communicate without a third party of the value proposition they're giving to the consumer. And if you can push that through the favourites, which is what we're looking to do long term, it is a game changer, because the value of this taking money from the advertising goes straight to the consumer. That is the beauty of this evolution. Now, I know, Ask Mr. Jeeves or Netscape were, early concepts in terms of browsers. Now, they don't exist. They're gone. Even now you've got Chrome and you've got Safari and things, but they're all those things will change with AI. They'll drop off. So don't get too carried away just because there has been that speculation. It's a speculative bubble, all that. It's got no fallback position other than desperately trying on all fronts to say that someone's prepared to stump up hundreds of millions of dollars to validate transactions through computing power and algorithms when you don't need it. That's why we have confidence in what we talk about, scalability of the technology. Now you get the opportunity to test the adoption of that because you've dumbed down the way in which people can get accessibility to the very same product. That's the beauty of getting it right in the first place. I mean, I read an article not that long ago, my hero, Steve Jobs. What I didn't realise was because he succumbed to a lot of this pressure of investors whinging and carrying on about price and stuff, in 2007, when the first iPhone was launched, it wasn't ready. So, to try and balance out and accommodate that scenario, which he then changed later on and said, no, I'll release when I'm ready for the mass adoption. But in that instance, he ended up using a prototype that didn't work. It was a themed out approach to show how it could work, but it was actually the technology that had to catch up to what the marketing was doing in 2007. Now, you don't need to go or want to go down that road. That's why everything we've mapped out, the system works beautifully. It's had 4 strong, solid years of transactions without people, if they govern it right themselves, they don't lose coins. They've got easy accessibility to downloading wallets, which we had that issue that few weeks back, and you've just got to accommodate it. Now, I'll try and tackle a few more. Isn't scaling the 32 decimal point of a Zucoin? Well, that's a different issue to scaling. As I've just said, you've got technical scalability and you've got marketing scalability, and then the fractions, because they are achievable to 32 decimal, that's all about adoption from a merchant's perspective predominantly to tokenise and enter into the real-world asset theme. So whether that's real estate, someone else will end up using fractions of Zucoins for as a stable coin. Won't be me, but someone else can come out and knock themselves out and build that. There will be the fractions that can be used because there's no fees and charges. That can be that, as I said, the local coffee shop can suddenly spit out $205 tokens that can be identifiable, legitimised through the chain, redeemed back to the merchant, and you get your $5 reward. That will spill into every single product that you can think about on the planet. If you have a business just as an example, but like Harvey Norman, and they are on your favourites list, and you allow them to send to you directly the cash values in those vouchers, and you store them, you have a couple of opportunities. You might get a $500 voucher for a TV set, and you might decide you don't need the TV set, so you can on-sell that voucher, in this instance through Zutopia, to someone else. Now, if someone hasn't got the benefit of that $500 but desperately wants a TV set, they may pay you $10, $50 or $100 because it is truly worth $500 in cash off against that TV. Now, you will not do that with Bitcoin or Ethereum. It won't happen. Now, in that instance I've just indicated, the core of the problem is that because even if you accelerated that to millions of transactions and you got 3.5 million people in Harvey Norman as members, and you've got 20 or 30,000 product lines, and you're pumping that out daily or hourly, it just cannot be done on the technology comparing apples with apples. It can't happen. And here we now can see that these particular processors, that's the computers, the Bitcoin miners, are underwater. I mean, nobody will continue processing for the owners of Bitcoin's benefit if they're going to continue to lose and make 21% losses on the current numbers. They desperately need a massive surge in price because, you know, what I didn't say is that if you look at that composition of 88,000, 60 to 80% is the kilowatt power usage in electricity required just to maintain the engine of those machines. Then you've got hosting costs, you've got staff, hardware acquisition and depreciation. I mean, the list goes on and on. So that's just one clear-cut example of just it all fits together by getting it right in the first place. Now, we may be completely wrong about this, but we're giving it a fair shake. We've got a massive investment interest in the project, but it's all about the long term, and that the price takes care of itself, people. It's a free market, and as I said, if it comes on that there's a terrible pricings with the Zutopia full throttle, well, you know, that's entirely a matter for those people that need to get rid of their coins. They won't get them back again because they'll have to pay a lot more as it tightens up. Now, let's just see. We've got a couple more here. Whoop, this goes on a bit. From my understanding, when Zutopia is launched, it will be available to anyone who has a Zucoin wallet, which will be local international. That's exactly right. Yeah, and it also, down the road, will be available to those that have a ZuHunt wallet, which is also an inbuilt Zucoin wallet. I won't confuse you with that, but people that end up hunting and collecting a Zucoin through a ZuHunt wallet get a combo. It's an automatic normal wallet. It automatically collects the fraction or coin that was to be hunted, and it automatically also can be built into the Zutopia app to trade immediately as well. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into that, and it looks brilliant. It works easy, and as I said, tightening up on the way in which the validation happens of transactions is phenomenal because you're not allowing or permitting the complications of major computing power to simply validate transactions. Now, that pretty well wasn't envisaged by Satoshi at the time. There's no way in the world he would have thought that you need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to simply validate transactions into the Bitcoin blockchain. There's no way. I'd put my house on it. He thought that the cyber punks out there would have their little computers running and move it around themselves and maintain it and get excited to earn a few coins, and that would be the end of it. But it's got harder and harder and more costly. As I just said, the average industry now is $88,000 US cost to a miner for the Bitcoin processes to take place and get a Bitcoin. But they're underwater already before they start. Now, someone said they've introduced 10 wallets. That is fantastic. If this is a reflection, then there should be around 50 to 100,000 ready to buy. I don't think it'll be that many. I said in an earlier broadcast that I'm looking at somewhere between 1,000 and 20,000, and then we'll hit our straps after that. So, again, just let the market take care of itself. But let's put that in perspective. The basic number of true traders on Zutopia in the soft launch phase was somewhere in the order of 70 to 200, even though we had a few thousand on, and still do, was between 70 and 200 active traders. Now, we expect that to accelerate a lot more, obviously, not just because of number of wallets, but because of the trading efficiencies and the timing. The time clocks have gone. It's instant transferability, instant gratification on sales of money. Now, if you do 100x on that, that is 100 times that, and you're talking 20,000, then there should be, in theory, 100 times the turnover, which starts to make Zutopia. That was 3.2 million coins that went through the system. There's about nearly $4 million, which is a lot for a soft launch, a very impressive amount. And if you do the maths on that and you get 100x, then, we could be talking anything from, 10 million to 150 million turnover per day, which is equivalent to the worst of the bottom of the top 100 exchanges today. But because we don't have all those costs and on-ramps and all the rest of it, that puts Zutopia miles ahead, which means that turnover correlates to increase in price. It's got no other choice. If there's an absorption of coins, you run out of coins. The fractions allow for utility, but the collection of those whole numbers of coins is quite significant. Now, we don't want to just be sitting there. Our model's not to be sitting with Zutopia at that level, because the more data that flows through from various locations, which I've indicated, we don't need to be Facebook to sell your personal data. What we do need is to identify that somebody, Mr. and Mrs. X, with a wallet somewhere, got a coffee or had a steak or bought a barbecue or whatever they did, and that data is extraordinarily valuable. Now, the more money that Zutopia makes from that data, the more opportunity it has to participate effectively as a market maker of acquiring coins as well for its own benefit to then create more utility. More on that later, but that's something that other exchanges can't perform, because it does have potentially, if you had 100 million people actively engaging with merchants and engaging with AR, then you have location-based information, you have database product information, but you don't jeopardise the private information of the individual, because Zutopia doesn't collect anything on its database relevant to you as a person. Stripe might matter for Stripe because they've got to be compliant, but Zutopia doesn't, because we don't store anything. We don't have a login. We have a wallet verification signature test. That's the beauty of the whole structure and system. Again, you dropped off with your answer. Could you repeat what's going to happen to the Zucoins that Zucoins are holding? I'm not quite sure what that means, but what's going to happen to Zucoins that Zucoins are holding? Oh, well, Zucoins has budgeted some of that towards marketing, which we've disclosed, and the rest of it's like everybody else. What you are going to do with your Zucoins that you're holding is a matter for you. It's neither here nor there. So ideally, if it's at $1 million a coin, then you could rest assured that there might be a few sold. There'll be a few sold at 65 at $1,000 a coin, because the Gulfstream jet costs about 80 million. So there's 80,000 coins there. But that's entirely a matter for every individual person as to what they do. Some people will sell and buy some nice cheap homes in Tehran and Gaza. Others might set up new businesses in Israel. That's just the nature of the beast. I've been a bit flippant there, but the reality is you do what you like with it. Many others understand the tax laws, and that if there is a surge in price, considerable surge, then you would never want to sell on Zutopia. You would simply take advantage of the merchants that are accepting Zucoins, which has got to be built up, and there is a $10,000 tax break per transaction. So if you're going to think about things you do in your daily life, then going out to dinner and having drinks and having a $9,000 bottle of Penfolds Grange, that might be to your liking. New wheels for the car, whatever it is, because that becomes a tax-free benefit break at that price. So there's plenty of things that'll come about. There'll be plenty of financial advisors and gurus and experts and putting it into super funds. And, in fact, I do have some ideas that it could be exciting enough to see, some tax planning that's revolutionary, in the sense that, Zucoin's HQ, for example, might actually set up a 399-year trust where the beneficiary is the Australian public or the government, and there's a life tenancy to use those assets. When I say 399 years, that's what the British did, but it might be somewhere in the order of what happened to Hong Kong, and that might be 99 years. So you give the next few generations the benefit of the assets, but it's actually owned by the Australian government under the terms of the trust, unilaterally owned. There's all sorts of concepts. I mean, there's a million and one things that can be done. I mean, at the moment, the focus in HQ, Zucoin's HQ, is pretty simple. Let's just tick a couple of boxes. Zutopia, next month. Let's get on with it. Whatever the price is, it'll take care of itself. Fire up. Tick box number 2. Fire up the mass marketing through our strategies. You can see them on the website. AR is going to play a big role in that. That's why the Zukaz app is crucial, or we're just calling it ZuHunt, because that's a lot easier to get around the world, and merchants can actually white label and create their own ZuHunts if they wish. It's all going to be part of the free code in that sense. Then there's tick box 3, tokenization. That's a $300 trillion industry. 300 trillion. That's real-world assets that are being tokenized, or the ownership can be proven once it's locked into the SplitChain of all sorts of things. It could be real estate. It could be artworks. It could be the vouchers. In my case, as in Dr. Zoo's case, one of those apps that's got to be built out, which has been played with at the moment, is the original 30-year-old lottery concept based on British premium bonds. That's another global adoption mechanism trigger. While the world falls in a heap and we see potential massive losses that are going to come to super funds and shares, and next thing will be the wave of property collapses because the interest rates are going to go up and nobody has a job because AI has taken the jobs, and there's the more contraction that happens and less money floating from the Middle East and all that, there is an opportunity to make money through the tokenization processes a standalone business with AI. And that can drive itself into places that you can fall back on that you would not normally be able to market to in the first place. So there's plenty of opportunities that we've got and boxes to tick. There's the litigation, tokenization that I've got ready to get involved with. You all know about that. So, that's a massive potential. A lot of these things will have to be regulated. As soon as you transfer that from the so-called vanilla Zucoin into something that triggers or could trigger some of the regulatory issues around the world, and they become borderline securities or derivatives or any of those things, then you're going to need, in Australia at least, an AFSL licence and partners and backers and litigation fees and all those things. So the first step, let's just crawl into April. Let's just calm down. Let's fire up all the engines. The highway's been built. I'm very, very happy with the capabilities and the processes. And then it'll be our collective efforts that come into play, plus what we do in HQ for the bigger picture. And the rest of it takes care. How you have the fact that people have the freedoms to sell as and when they see fit and for whatever reasons they want, that is a pure peer-to-peer free market. Could be high, could be low. That's the reality of it. As I mentioned once in another segment, a company called Nakamoto Inc. has collapsed. It was a Bitcoin treasury U-boot structure to take on and own Bitcoins, and it's been a $23.9 billion loss to those people that have invested in that particular company. All-time highs of around $23 or less, and you can get them up for 30 cents because it's collapsed. So you're not going to avoid the potential of risks. That is life. That's how it is. And for anybody, nobody forces anybody to buy anything. Nobody forces anybody to buy Zucoins or be participants. But as a community of like-minded people looking towards that opportunity, that makes it stronger. And you can rest assured there are people that are putting in 24/7 to have now got to this point to delivering exactly where we want to be, even though the whole core of the system's been going incredible. Now, someone's put up some stuff here. 32 decimal places. Yep, that looks pretty good. That looks one quadrillion coin, if it's that massive marketing itself. So if Zucoins reaches 100,000, that is exactly correct. And that was specifically designed when we first did the very first spec papers in 2018, that we wanted to be in a position, unlike everything else, that if there's 100 million, which there is, capped Zucoins, that if the price hit 100,000 or $1 million per coin, then the masses still have an opportunity to accumulate a fraction, or there can still be the purchase of that coffee, which creates money supply. That's the quantity theory of money, and demand for continuous movement of value, even at the low values. That was specifically in our minds at the time. We are on the record for having put that deliberately in play for that reason, because if you think about it, and even today, like let's look at the latest price, because we've got Trumpy's excitement coming up in the next 24 hours, which will be massive. We'll all fall off a cliff, or he might negotiate a settlement. Who knows? Or we'll find a few rockets hit London. That'll be really put the cat amongst the pigeons, especially those cats that have been dying recently. Dead cat bounces all over the place. But at $68,583 US, you'd have to be a pretty ballsy player to even buy one Bitcoin at that price in US dollars, thinking that you're going to double your money in this environment for all the reasons we've just talked about, that it's going to double in price, to about 140,000 US dollars. That would be one ballsy situation, and you've got to keep an eye on Michael Saylor with strategy, because he's sitting on billions of debt. He's underwater, and if that sort of stuff got onto the market, then there's no question that once you flood without the support of the masses to buy into Bitcoin, because the small bloke in the street ain't going to be buying, if that happened, then you're talking a massive collapse, that Bitcoin could drop to 15 or 20,000 at least, because there's nothing there to absorb that hit. That is a real problem. Look, I'm going to try and wrap up here. Hi, Alan. Tell us to be patient. We hear you and we have complied. Well, you're not complying with anything, really. You've taken the risks. You've come on board. The good news is that Zucoin's HQ's got a $50 million risk. I understand that, but it's like anything. If you'd have sat in Apple, you'd have been sitting there for 20 years before you even saw the uptake, as it was flatlining for 20 years. So, yes, I hear that, and the support is extraordinary and fantastic. But again, you've assessed the risks, you've taken a position. That's just how it is. You didn't have to take those risks, and there's plenty of other people that have taken risks that now have nothing. And so I indicated that those that were in the HOC2 coin lost all their 490 million within 15 minutes. So you can take the quick road to oblivion, or you take the long road to success, and things take time. So I don't make any excuses for that. The technology's been fully running successfully for 4 years, as I said, and now we're into the exciting fun phase to take advantage of that uptake, and you are like all the others in the same boat. That's not to say it's going to be successful either. I mean, it could easily be a situation where that the values take a lot longer. I mean, Bitcoin, in a traditional sense, was trading at 1 cent and took 5.5 years before it even saw the daylight at around your $20 or $30 a coin at that stage. And in fact, 4 years since the inception of Bitcoin, Bitcoin had a total market capitalization of about 120 million. And at the end of 4 years from our position of the launch of the original, as it is, stands the Zucoin wallet, peer-to-peer, on the last trades went through, we've got a cap value of 205 million. So we're well ahead of schedule. It's just that we all want to get excited to become wealthy quickly. I understand that, but they don't. It doesn't happen quick. So, your indication there that many have been involved for several years, and thank you very much for that. We appreciate that, and that's what we work hard here to try and get that to a position of value that comes back as a result of that risk. But it is high risk. Crypto has been high risk. I mean, behind the scenes, it's taken us many years to get through the legal barriers, which you don't see. You just don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to have a crypto. That's not going to happen. And we're getting the benefits of the millions spent on Zutopia, both tech and legal, for example, because there was a problem. Dr. Zoo lost $1 million because those other exchanges failed in every respect. So at this point, we're very, very happy. There's no timeline on that. And you've got here, at this juncture, are we talking months, years or decades to get the result we've been hanging on for? I'm not sure what your result is, but some people were excited during the trading soft launch phase of Zutopia have doubled their money. Others have tripled it just trading in that because they bought low and sold at those increase in prices. For the others, it's a case of, yes, wait and follow through with what's happening, or go out and create your own wealth proposition by your own marketing of Zucoins and your own marketplaces. And, don't just sit back drinking that Grange. Get out there and pop into the winery and see how you can help out. You might have to pick a few grapes, but, that's the outcome. There's no guaranteed of any results. That's just a nonsense on anything in life. Who would have thought that there would be a guarantee for all those people that invested in property in Dubai? There's been an 80% collapse in prices in 4 weeks. So, time is an incredible thing, and a lot of the hard yards are done, take a bit longer, but there's no fixed hard and fast thing. We're rolling out exactly how we see it, and we're into the fun part now. So over the next many months, we will just keep pushing ahead exactly with what's going to happen. Now, sounds like it's going to take a few years, as it won't happen next month. Well, I'm not sure whether you're talking about you're going to get a penthouse in Melbourne next month, or whether you're thinking that you need a new Lamborghini, but it's already happened. The coins have been trading. We had a high of $115 a coin and a low of 53 cents. So that's just the free market. Whether you took advantage of that or not, that was the reality. So just sit tight. Otherwise, people can focus on something else. There's no forcing anybody to do anything. But what is happening is that you've got people working at no cost to anyone that's a holder, where wages aren't a problem and overheads aren't a problem and legals aren't a problem, and you can sit back and relax and in the knowledge that there's people working long hours to deliver these outcomes. Whether they're successful or not, time will tell. So we'll wait and see. We want it successful because it's not in our interests at all to not see this. And it's been hugely successful at where we sit currently, right here and now. So that's the beauty. Now I'm going to try to wind up here now. If everything's running perfectly, what are we waiting on? I don't know what you're waiting for. You can go out and market Zucoins, and you can build whatever you like to build, and you can create your own access to the code at the back end for the wallets and create your own wallets. You can do whatever you like. So I'm not sure what you're waiting on. We've set out what we see the program, and that's just how it is. So it's running beautifully. I've never seen a better crypto transferability of value on the planet. That's how it is. So you might set up a podcast. You might go out and enjoy yourself with the social media, play around on X and start talking about Zucoins. So it only takes one, and that's your contribution. It'll be fantastic. So don't wait. By all means, don't wait. Get out there and about. Get out and about and get on with it. Now, let's just work our way back through here. Someone set up the show. April 1. April 1 is actually a serious date that I would love. It's most likely not going to happen, but I would love to launch Zutopia, official launch, lock, stock and barrel on April 1, because that was the day that Steve Jobs and Wozniak had decided to launch Apple as a joke on April 1, despite it being a serious business. So April, if you do some history checks, people, is quite a significant month of some of the biggest projects in the world launched, for funnily enough, I don't know why, but it is. It's quite a significant month. Microsoft launched in April 4, I think. You've got some incredible projects that have launched, and we've already been launched. We're talking about Zutopia, people. I'm not talking about Zucoins. It's up and about and has been up and about for a long time. We're talking about Zutopia to open the floodgates to the market, to then we're trying to really focus on Zutopia to get rid of the urge and urgency of people wanting to cash out, and that's your opportunity to do that. That's creating the marketplace. April means nothing other for that, to remove that element of what people focus on right now. It's better to focus on the longer pictures, what we're working on, and that's the integrations and the merchants and things I've talked about. And lastly, we've got what is the hold up with Zutopia, and the hold up is Dr. Zoo. Pretty simple. So that's where it's at. When I'm ready, we will release Zutopia at some stage in April. So 2026, for those of the clever ones out there. And that's just me. That's how it is. That's the decision at HQ. And that's really to just set things up, take a little bit of pressure off the silly sellers and see how it pans out with the instant technology, and then we can hit it hard when we're ready on the mass marketing side, and also integrate the AR. But don't get too wound up with April. It'll be because that's when the next wave of whinges come in. Oh, the price is low, I'm not worth the multi-millionaires. So let's put that on the record today so that when we get to that point, we can talk about that as a bit of a funny one that Dr. Zoo mentioned. Rightio, people, 5:31. That's well and truly beyond where I wanted to be. Haven't talked about one of the topics at all today. Just worked our way through those questions. Fantastic stuff. Keep up the good stuff, people. For the supporters, you've been unbelievable. And, we're going to... One thing we can guarantee you is that there's 120% of effort into this next phase. And this is the exciting phase. This is where the beast is unleashed. And we're comfortable with all the stuff to give us a fair crack at the capacity for new people taking up this incredible opportunity without the problems at the back end, and that's important. You build the highway and you will see the various models of cars travelling at whatever speeds they want on that highway. That's the vision. And just leave on this note, the second mouse gets the cheese, and all those that are the first mouses, your days are numbered. So just stay the game plan, stick with it, people. And someone's just put up here that Google Earth was the 18th of April, so that says it all. Cheerio, everybody. Been fantastic again. Look forward to our next episode. Things will get a bit smoother with this little program we're running here, and we will be back into it. Cheers, everybody.